him to tell the jury exactly what he saw that night. And you have to ask yourself why that is. Because he's playing a fraudulent recording of me beating Kenyatta Barron 15 times when that did not happen.
Breaking the law will always have consequences, even when a criminal has been able to escape justice for a while. It's usually a matter of time before they eventually face the music. And for these criminals, like the proverbial thief, their 40th day has come, and they're going to jail for their crimes. This is Joseph McEnroe, a triple homicide convict from Washington State. In 2007, on Christmas Eve, Joseph and his girlfriend Michelle Anderson decided to kill 6 people in her family, 2 of whom were children.
Joe, how often do you think about killing the Andersons?
It's in my mind all the time.
The residents of Carnation, Washington felt such overwhelming terror in the wake of this, and it's not hard to see why. Of all the murder incidents in the country, the 911 call that reported this crime described one of the most gruesome pictures ever.
What? There's been a murder. There's 3 people dead that I can see right now.
Inside?
I just came up. She works with me.
Inside the house?
Yes.
What do you see?
There's a baby and a man and a woman, and she's my best friend.
The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense. Throughout most of the trial, McEnroe remained composed and unfazed despite being subjected to a grueling cross-examination.
So I moved quickly forward into the down the hall and into the no, I'm ready down the hall into the kitchen, and she comes around from the other end of the kitchen.
You said you moved forward.
I just
You gotta put your middle bullets into the fire, right? You know what was going through your head? You pulled the trigger and shot the guy's brain?
nothing. Just nothing.
However, during his sentence hearing, the calm facade he wore crumbled. His description of the horrific killing set off an unanticipated eruption that illuminated the eerie abyss within.
Talk about what happened on December 24th, okay?
Yes.
Tell us now, first of all, in that last month, 4 weeks, you're up there at the trailer. What were you doing during those 4 weeks?
Is it to bait a trap? No, it's because we can't just leave these dead people here, okay? So I moved. So I went and moved Judy first. I put a bag over her head because I couldn't look at her because of see the emptiness. Well, she should be. So
Presenting the sentencing, the presiding judge strongly condemned McEnroe's horrific crimes.
In a matter of moments, you became their judge, jury, and executioner. They were defenseless before you as you wielded your firearm. There was no opportunity for them to save themselves, to obtain a reprieve, or to save each other. They were cowardly ambushed on Christmas Eve, a time when they expected nothing but joy and goodwill. Although your life has been spared, Mr. McEnroe, this court now sentences you to the harshest sentence otherwise available under the law. Life imprisonment without the possibility of release or parole on count 1 for the murder of Wayne Anderson. Life imprisonment without the possibility of release or parole on count 2 for the murder of Judy Anderson. Life imprisonment without the possibility of release or parole on count 3 for the murder of Scott Anderson. Life imprisonment without the possibility of release or parole on count 4 for the murder of Erica Anderson. Life imprisonment without the possibility of release or parole on count 5 for the murder of Olivia Anderson. And life imprisonment without the possibility of release or parole on count 6 for the murder of...
Joseph McEnroe's courtroom meltdown showcased the emotional tumultuousness of a merciless killer. But how does it compare to other shocking courtroom scenes, like in the case of Ronnie O'Neal?
If you think I'm here to play around with y'all, God damn it, I'm not.
All right. right, Mr. O'Neal, please stop using swearing language. It's not appropriate in a closing argument.
The atmosphere in the courtroom was heated as Ronnie O'Neal trial got underway. The father was accused of the unfathomable. He was said to have killed his daughter and his girlfriend. On March 18, 2018, a tragic event occurred. O'Neal abducted, raped, and in cold blood killed his girlfriend, Kenyatta Barron, and their 9-year-old daughter, Ronnie. He also tried to kill this 11-year-old son, Ronnie, at their Riverview, Florida home, setting it on fire thereafter in an attempt to cover his crimes. The charges were equally as terrifying as O'Neal's calm demeanor in court.
My mom ran in my sister's room. My mom ran in my sister's room into the closet. And then my dad said, come in here and come kill the B-word.
Luckily, his son survived and escaped the fire. On that fateful day before Ronnie had committed the atrocities, Kenyatta had called 911 to report Ronnie's behavior.
Hey, I just been attacked by some white demons. Inside Kiki. Kiki, her name is Kiki.
In the background.
However, the call stopped abruptly. Not long afterward, Ronnie called to say that he killed Kenyatta because she was possessed by white demons who were trying to kill him. O'Neal committed horrifying atrocities, but what was more shocking was his behavior in court. In an odd turn of events, O'Neal decided to represent himself. He angrily confronted the jury and accused the victims of being responsible for his horrible deeds.
Kill Kenyatta Barron. But I want you to tell it like it is. If you gonna tell.
Tension escalated, reaching a boiling point as O'Neal cross-examined his own son. The young boy showed unbelievable bravery as he confronted his father and described the atrocity, leaving the entire courtroom in awe.
Did you see me shoot your mom?
No.
Did I hurt you that night of this incident?
Yes.
I did. And how did I hurt you?
You stabbed me.
Without remorse, O'Neal declared that he was not sorry for his actions, causing the judge to admonish him.
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
His defense was a jumble of denials and charges against the law enforcement officers for creating false evidence. Throughout the trial, the jury was confronted with his insane outburst.
I asked him to tell the jury exactly what he saw that night. And you have to ask yourself why that is. Because he's playing a fraudulent recording of me beating Kenyatta Barron 15 times when that did not happen. And like I told you earlier, you will know the truth whether in this trial or the next one. Better believe it. And if you think I'm here to play around with y'all, I don't know.
All right, Mr. O'Neal, please stop using swearing language. It's not appropriate in a closing argument.
O'Neal did, however, offer his sympathy for his victim's family's loss while also criticizing the legal system.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Judge Michelle Cisco called the case the worst she had ever seen, clearly touched by the evidence provided.
15 years I've been at this job. I've seen human beings killed at the hands of others in every way imaginable. You name it, I've seen. Shootings, stabbings, drownings, suffocatings, blown apart by cars, and DUI manslaughter cases. Horrible things. This is the worst case I've ever seen as far as the facts go.
The jury recommended life without parole. Judge Cisco followed the jury's recommendation. O'Neal received sentences of 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole for the murder count. In addition, he was given 30 years for arson and 30 years for each case of aggravated child abuse, meaning that he would spend an additional total of 90 years, a decision that resounded throughout the courtroom.
With that, on count 1, Mr. O'Neal, I will adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to life in prison with a minimum mandatory of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Count 2, I will adjudicate you guilty, and adjudicate you guilty on count 1 as well. Count 2, adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole, consecutive to count 1. On count 3, I'm going to sentence you on the attempted murder, adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to life in prison, running consecutive to counts 2 and consecutive to count 1. On count 4, on the arson, first-degree dwelling, I will adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to 30 years Florida State Prison to run consecutive to counts 1, 2, and 3.
The courtroom saga of Ronnie O'Neal told the terrifying story of a broken family. However, when we dive further into the dark recesses of psycho killers, we come across chilling stories of courtroom meltdowns, like the case of Darrel Brooks, former sexual offender who committed 6 murders in a single day.
Can you even call yourself a
Mr.
judge?
Brooks, I need to make a record of some
I need to make a record too.
You don't
When
need
am I going to get the chance to do that?
All right, I need to make a record. He's being removed to the other courtroom. He is yelling at me.
On November 21st, 2021, Darrel Brooks crashed an SUV into the Waukesha, Wisconsin annual Christmas parade, killing 6 people, including an 8-year-old child, and injuring 62 others. Brooks knocked on a house's front door after leaving the horrifying crime scene, claiming he was a homeless man and needed to use a phone to call an Uber.
What's up? Hands up! Put your hands where I can see them! Put your hands up! Hands up! Hands up! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Do it now!
Hey, take him one of the hospitals for a plan care.
What did I do? Lay on your stomach. What did I do?
Robert, are you on
The kind homeowner who offered Darrel a burger and a warm jacket soon sensed that something wasn't right. They requested that they leave their home. They then called the cops, who came and arrested him before he could leave. As if Darrel's acts weren't terrible enough, his actions in court were absolutely insane. The public saw a sickening composure that was not inspired by an unbreakable defense, as Brooks' defense was anything but great. The more defense witnesses he presented, the more tension built with every second that went by.
What were you doing the evening of November 21st, 2021, before linking up with the alleged defendant?
Hanging with my roommate at the time at Frame Park.
And what were you and your roommate doing?
I'll object. We covered this ground during her testimony previously.
Objection and grounds for, I object to that and grounds for the objection on behalf of the state.
Brooks behaved aggressively and disruptively throughout the trial, constantly interrupting Judge Jennifer Doro to make ludicrous arguments.
Except for his own behavior.
Mr. Brooks, be quiet.
Except for
I'm not
his...
gonna sit here and be disrespected.
Mr. Brooks, there's nothing disrespectful. They're doing it in
Yes,
a
it is.
respectful...
To that end, Judge Doro had Brooks locked in a room with a monitor so he could participate virtually but could not talk until it was his time to speak.
Record that at 8:42 a.m. this court ordered Mr. Brooks be removed from the courtroom due to repeated interruptions and disruption with the court. You can see that he is seated with his back to the court or to the camera. He took his shirt off as well. I'm also told that he is threatening to throw and break items.
This approach was used each time Brooks continued to speak out of turn and defied the authority of the judge.
Just said no. How many times I gotta say the same thing on record?
You know, sometimes, sir, I don't hear what you say because you interrupt me so much or you answer quietly. And I'm taking notes and I'm focused on probably a dozen things at the same time.
It has to be disparaging.
Once again, you're doing this tactic.
Because
you try to
it's not a tactic,
off
it's
of
facts.
What we're talking
It's
about
facts.
to some other reason.
It's fact.
You have 2 pictures that you believe were from this witness.
That I know is from.
know that you believe.
Did I know?
Judge Darrel put everything on the line during the sentencing, warning Brooks that she wouldn't be letting him off the hook lightly because he had shown neither empathy. She made it quite evident that his destructive impulses were a danger to everyone.
It is very clear to this court that Mr. Brooks has caused carnage, mayhem. It has resulted in many people suffering from PTSD, from mental and emotional trauma that will take a lifetime to recover from, and for some, perhaps, if at all. Frankly, Mr. Brooks, no one is safe from you. This community can only be safe if you are behind bars for the rest of your life.
Brooks used the moment to address the judge. He babbled on for more than 2 hours, wondering why such an event had occurred and how life had deviated from its ideals.
How could life ever get this far away from what it should be? I know who I am. God knows who I am. I had to look inside myself and understand why the comments was being made.
The placid surface faded as the trial went on. During a tense moment in court, Brooks' stress became apparent as he fumbled for paperwork. His self-representation not helping, he said he was not angry and that he would not fire shots at anyone, yet he did anyway. He verbally insulted the district attorney, showing no respect for the way she carried out her duties.
We're not going to move past this, seeing as how you took an oath to protect the Constitution. I have your oath. I have a copy of your oath right here. The oath that you took, Your Honor.
Mr. Brooks, I'd like to continue with testimony. We have witnesses waiting for you. Please call your next witness.
The oath that you swore to protect the Constitution, which you are now not doing.
Mr. Brooks,
So you're going
call your
against
next
your
witness,
sworn
please.
oath. You're going against your sworn oath.
I will make the record when we get back. I will step off, but Mr. Brooks, you're being
It ain't
taken
no
to the next
Mr.
courtroom.
Brooks. Don't try to address me
Thank
like
you.
that, like we cool. You don't have no integrity. How can you even call yourself a judge? Making tacit agreements, being biased, judicial misconduct.
Several victims of Brooks' horrific crimes turned up to share their devastating tales and express their disgust at his continued existence.
November 21st, you killed my mother. And in this courtroom, I watched you run her down and her broken body slide across the concrete. This woman loved and she was loved. You ran her down like she was nothing. And since that day, you have shown no remorse. You'd offered no explanation for your atrocities. It offends me that you're sitting here breathing while she is not. You are a monster. You deserve contempt and death.
My name is Chris Owen, and I am the plaintiff. I'm here on behalf of another plaintiff, my mother, Leanna Joy Owen. The reason none of the witnesses saw her in this courtroom is because she was executed by a killing offender. Now my dad has nightmares of her body flying through the air and shattering against concrete. Yeah, shake your head. Shake your head. You know, because that is what you took from me. And there's nothing this court can do that would provide justice in my eyes. So all I ask is that you rot, and you rot slump.
While Brooks' family attempted to claim that his mental state was a factor in his actions, the judge swiftly put an end to that line of reasoning, clearly stating that it wasn't a reason or excuse for his heinous crimes. After a suspenseful trial, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all 76 counts, including 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide. Darrel Brooks' cool facade immediately collapsed. Jennifer Doro, the judge, handed him 6 consecutive life terms. For each of the 61 counts of first-degree recklessly endangering safety with a deadly weapon, she added an additional 17 and a half years to the sentence.
I will read each one into the record. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrel E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 1 of the information. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrel E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 6 of the information. Dated today's date, signed by the foreperson. Did the defendant commit first-degree intentional homicide while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes.
Brooks' actions in court were bizarre, but how do they compare to those of Damon Kemp, whose rage drove him from a rent dispute to a double murder conviction shocking Daytona Beach, Florida?
God! 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 God!
Kemp, a 19-year-old from Stone Mountain, Georgia, was accused of 2 charges of armed burglary and second-degree murder. The victims, his roommates, both 19-year-olds, were found shot and dead in a horrifying scene that shocked the neighborhood.
A lot of students that live in this complex?
Yes, sir.
Are most of them BCU students?
Yes, sir.
And is it normally a place where murders happen?
No, sir.
An eerie atmosphere pervaded the courtroom as soon as Kemp was wheeled in for his trial. The once quiet young man seemed tormented, as though fighting invisible demons. His face was twisted in a way that combined anger and sorrow, repeatedly crying out, "God," startling everyone in the courtroom. His eerie silence after the eruptions was almost as terrifying as the cries. Unfazed, the judge continued the case and refused to grant him bond.
I do believe that there is probable cause for the arrest, and under these circumstances, I am not able to grant you bond or any form of pretrial release.
There was palpable tension in the courtroom as the prosecution and defense engaged in a heated argument. Kemp's defense team requested leniency despite the seriousness of his offense. However, the heartbreaking accounts provided by the victims' relatives highlighted the suffering and irreversible damage that Kemp's actions had inflicted.
I called him a child of God so that he understand he had a higher purpose in this world. He used to say that he wanted to be a police officer, and you know that's dangerous.
Kemp was found guilty in May and given 3 life sentences, sealing his fate. The strange silence that followed his rants felt like a calm after a terrible storm. Damon Kemp's courtroom meltdown was a window into the disturbing and sometimes dark realities that unfold in courts. However, it's not all the time that courtrooms are tense with anxiety and darkness. Sometimes they get treated to a hilarious twerk, like in the case of Calvin Lloyd Griffith. This is Calvin Lloyd Griffith. He is being charged in Miami-Dade County, Florida, with grand theft, burglary, and trespassing. Griffith, a well-known car thief, 30, was already serving a probationary sentence for related offenses when he decided to ramp up his illegal activity. The reported theft of a Volkswagen Passat from Miami Edison Senior High School parking lot by Griffith marked the beginning of it all. However, the true spectacle started when Griffith showed up for his bond hearing before Judge Catherine Pooler.
Anyway, because I smoke weed and cocaine.
His microphone was switched off when he began talking over the judge. Then he started acting oddly to draw the judge's attention. Clearly seeking attention, he shouted, "My mom's here," as he was brought into the courtroom. When that proved inadequate, he turned the one thing he was sure would get everyone's attention. Judge Pooler was not amused, even as the courtroom erupted in stifled laughter. According to Griffith's family, he had a mental illness and wasn't taking his medication at the time of his courtroom escapades.
Your mom is here with a bag full, it looks like his medicine.
The charges against Griffith included trespassing in a school safety zone, grand theft, petite theft, and burglary. He had already served time on probation for similar crimes, so this wasn't his first rodeo. Judge Pooler didn't take long to grant the bond and caution Griffith against going to Miami Edison Senior High School. While we love us some little twerk, it won't win you any favors in court, Griffith. Griffith may be a dancer, however, not all convicts resort to dancing in court, especially not Martez Abram. This is Martez Abram.
Look at the screen, sir.
Yes.
That's you shooting him?
Yes.
And you admit that you shot him in cold blood?
Yes.
Let's see.
His name will live on ineffecably in South Haven, Mississippi. In 2019, he entered the nearby Walmart with the intention of using violence to resolve a conflict at work. On July 30th, 2019, Abram, who had just been suspended, decided he wanted his revenge. Armed to the teeth, he stormed into the Walmart, killing 2 managers, Anthony Brown and Brandon Gales, and shooting a South Haven police officer. He luckily survived.
He was laying on the ground with his eyes open, full of blood, and I ran up to him. I kneeled down, and I looked at him. I said, "Anthony, honey, please say KC one more time. Just say KC one more time."
Loving and caring, hardworking young man that I know, and he truly loved his family.
Now, in the courtroom, the tension reached a breaking point as Abram suddenly catapulted as an open meltdown overtook him, surprising everyone.
You shooting him?
Yes.
And you admit that you shot him in cold blood?
Yes.
Now it was time for justice. A guilty verdict had been turned in by the jury, and the judge was about to lay down the sentence.
Count 1, I will sentence you to death
Count 2, you will be sentenced to death. And count 3, you will be sentenced to life.
Clearly, he didn't like the sentence. But does anyone ever like to suffer the consequences of their bad actions? Let us know down below which case stood out for you.